Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Legacy of Yangchen chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 25, which is called The Price. So everyone who's read this chapter, you know that this is a pretty emotional chapter. It's a real gut punch because we get the death of two characters, and it's just exceedingly tragic and brutal the way it all happens, because it's only like 3 and a bit pages, this chapter. It goes from everything's going well, like we've learned what we needed to do from the island, we've saved 2 kids, we're on our way, it seems like we have a bit of an advantage over Chai-Si, we just have 1 combustion bender to deal with, and there's a lot of confidence coming out of what happened before. And it's amazing how in just a couple of pages everything completely changes to the point where you're like, is there really any way that things can go right now? Because this is going to be such a devastating kind of thing for Yangchen to deal with. And can she kind of get going again after this? Because she's obviously putting a lot of pressure on herself. She's going through a lot. But now to lose someone so close to her like this, can she come back from this? And it's the kind of obstacle that was kind of, I suppose, needed at this point in the story, but it just happens so suddenly, and I like it from like a writing perspective of like FCE is able to just make this thing just happen like that. You don't see it coming, and like Kavik and everyone else, their reaction to how quickly this changes, you have the same as the characters, and I think that's very strong. But let's go through this one. So like I said, everything's going okay here. You know, the kids are asking about, oh, like you came here on a bison, you know, that's kind of cool. So there's always a lot of a reaction every time someone meets a sky bison for the first time. But, you know, then the idea is that the kids eventually go to sleep. And so the team is able to actually kind of properly talk openly about what they experienced on the island. So the first thing we get through is just the idea of it, like Chai-Si. She was developing weapons on the island, and she was making tools through mass production, a numbers game where she discarded the failures. Unanimity was just her biggest success. She needs to pay for this. She doesn't get to walk away clean. She doesn't get to see her plans fulfilled. So that's Yangchen. Like, she is laser focused on this. Like, it feels like everything is going her way. She can do this. She can stop what's about to happen in Taku, and she is now, you know, righteous justice against what's happening here. Jujinta asks, what are they going to do with the children? Yangchen says that the simple idea would be to just find their families if they have any, and, you know, give them back to them, of course. But she also thinks about it logically, rationally in a way. That's not perfectly safe though. What if Chai-Si comes for them? Raite himself especially is super important because he is a combustion bender. He might not be a fully trained combustion bender, as dangerous as Thapa is, but the idea is he is someone who, I suppose the idea realistically is that someone could pick him up and turn him into a true weapon, and that makes him one of the most valuable assets in the entire world. Jujinta says it. He'd become worth his weight in platinum several times over. So Yangchen thinks, like, so I guess the smartest move would be to just kind of hide them until the heat dies down, but she also considers that Yunarak did this with Kavik. She did this with the Firebenders and Honsha. This is something that never particularly works super well, especially based off kind of recent events. Like, is this the safest option? And it's kind of the idea of, you know, it is, again, choosing that rational option over perhaps what is ultimately best for the kids. But you can't ignore the idea that, especially for Raite, it would be almost irresponsible to just, like, leave him with a family and then kind of back away. Just because anyone anywhere could have spies, they could come for him at any point. So they have to consider that as well. And it's just the characters all kind of wrapped in thought, thinking about, like, wow, this is such a complicated situation, like, and in a way all constructed by Chai-Si. This is why she needs to go down for this, is because she has put children and others in this position by making them disposable except for their value based on their skills as an asset. Then we go into the final section of this chapter. So they can't land in Taku, of course, because Yangchen's undercover. The idea is that this mission, even leaving, was an undercover mission. Because again, this was a detail I left out, I think, from a chapter or two ago. When they left, they established that like even Nujian has like a body double effectively. So there's a random sky bison in the stables in Taku, kind of acting as Nujian. So they can't just kind of suddenly double the amount of sky bisons that they have. So they have to kind of effectively sneak back in, and especially now that they have kind of two new people with them, the kids, there's even more, need for caution here. So then we get down to the discussion here. So Yangchen says, we're going to help you to, it might take a while, but we're going to make things as right as we can. I know we haven't told you much about ourselves, but I promise we're on your side. Raite then asks, answer me one question. Are you going to take down the people who ran the camp? Are you really going to bust Chai Si? This is where Yangchen actually takes off her headscarf, revealing herself to be the Avatar to everyone for the first time. And she says, I swear on the spirits that we're going to bring her to justice. By the time we're done, she won't have a square inch of dirt to her name. And Raite nods. And for Yangchen, it feels like that's all she really sees. Like a lot of the other characters, they just see it as like, okay, great. That's exactly what I wanted. Because that would be the kind of, in a way, expected reaction from these kids. They've been saved from this kind of torturous experience, and now they've got confirmation from the Avatar that she will bring the person who ultimately did this to them to justice. That's all they want. Great. But Kavik lingers on Raite's face after she gives this answer. The light caught his face, and his expression made Kavik realize many things at once. Multiple insights cramming their way through the crowded door of his mind, speeding his thoughts but slowing his body. And he basically goes through the idea that we have all made a mistake. Me, Yangchen, Jujinta, we messed up. We spoke about basically high-level things that the kids weren't meant to hear. We assumed they were asleep, but no. Raite was awake, listening in the entire time. And because of that, and because of what they said, this is now causing him to react. Because the reveal here, this is not the answer he wanted. He doesn't particularly care about, like, Chai Si getting punishment, like revenge, basically, for what happened. He's more thinking along the lines of, you've just told me I am the most valuable asset in the entire world, effectively. And you kind of want to take that away from me and just give me what a normal average life, when he can be this super valuable person. So in a way, Yangchen has said the exact wrong thing here and has kind of caused, in a way, this incident to happen. But in reality, it's Chai Si who has caused this to happen by kind of torturing the kids in a way so much that this is how they kind of view the world, view themselves, purely as my talent. In a way, Raite is kind of a Thapa in the making. Thapa very much is just like, I have the skills, pay me. Raite kind of going down that same path. And that's the thing here. Raite views this as, Yangchen is going to ruin my golden opportunity. And Kavik is the only one who sees this initially. But as he's kind of running this all through his head, this all happens over the course of a few seconds. So the second he realizes what's about to happen here, he makes his move. But Raite acts first. The boy inhaled sharply through his nose, and his stomach caved in on itself. Kavik dives and tackles Xian and Yangchen out of the way. You get a little bit of his thought process as he kind of realizes, like, ooh, have I made a mistake by tackling Yangchen? Because Yangchen has incredible reflexes. Might she, like, last second be able to counter what's about to happen because she is so powerful and I've ruined that? But he kind of, in a way, realizes that no. She only right now is thinking of Raite as like a child that she has saved. She, in many ways, is naive about this sort of stuff. Like Akudan, I think, said it before. They referenced that here. This is kind of part of her weakness, but it's kind of what makes her who she is, that she would never view a child in this way. And so her guard is completely down. And so kind of Kavik kind of is, quote unquote, saving her here. But the idea is that they're still going to get caught in a combustion blast. Like, Kavik has just sort of like tackled them like a little bit out of the way. It's still a combustion blast theoretically coming in. It's even noted that like Jujinta can barely move to draw his, dagger to throw it or something like that. But it says, this is the key part. The Avatar wasn't out of companions though. Nujian rams into Raite. And what happens here is that we get the pop, but as kind of Nujian kind of in a way full covers Raite, we get this sort of just kind of like muffled whump. So it doesn't, no explosion goes off, because they'll say about Nujian's wounds that there is no wound. So what happens here is he basically prevents the initial combustion blast from happening, but we know what happens when you do this. Like what happened to Combustion Man, when you stop it, it creates all the pops all around them, and they're like miniature kind of combustion bursts, effectively. And so I guess because of the timing here, what it is effectively done is it's kind of created multiple just kind of pressure explosions. And so there's no like fire as such here, but the pressure kind of things still happen. And it says here that, suddenly more bursts, rapid, too many, and no one can react in time, because no one can move a giant sky bison off the kid. So Nujian just takes all of these hits, and Kavik quickly gets up, goes around. We get the reveal, Raite is dead. And specifically, we get the detail. And in a way, we've kind of wondered about this to a certain degree. Like, they always talk about pressure when the technique is performed. Well, here is it gone wrong. A single small wound in the middle of his forehead, no bigger than a punch mark of an awl, trickled blood all over his skin, as if the pressure of his technique had failed to project past his skull and sought a channel of escape. So it's that idea of like you use the pressure to, in a way, force the technique to generate past the front of your head so that it's not going like through your head. And in this case, he has effectively kind of forced it through his head directly. I suppose speaking to the fact that he isn't a skilled practitioner of this skill. Also the fact that, he seemed to just do kind of one breath and fire it as well, whereas you need to generate it like slowly with lots of breaths. So the idea is he's kind of performed the technique kind of too quickly and hasn't prepared himself to actually fire off a blast, and that's caused part of the problem as well. But right as we get the confirmation that Raite is dead, Nujian, who's still moving a bit, collapses and is just completely still. At this point, Yangchen runs over and she's just screaming his name. It's pretty harsh at this point, everything going on here. They mention here there was no visible burn mark, no wound to attack. She tries to do healing like all over his body, but in a way there's been so much like internal damage from all of these miniature pressure explosions that she can't heal him. It's just like it's too big. There's too much damage over too much space. What can she do here? And we just get he was gone. Nujian is dead, and it's a brutal way to end the chapter, because the Yangchen is she borderline like has a panic attack. Like she gasps, searching for air to breathe, and when she found it, she cried softly, the quietest noise Kavik had ever heard her make. It's a very tragic way to end it here, because yes, like Avatar companion here gone, animal guide, but also like a child is dead as well. Like and even though like Raite was the one who kind of like quote unquote caused this to happen, it's still a tragedy that like effectively Chai Si's actions have morphed Raite to feel this way about himself, to make this choice here in this moment, and cause this kind of tragic turn of events. And it's all the more reason to be like, that is how she views people, as kind of tools. And it's only a person who kind of in a way takes that to heart and treats themselves like they're only good for their skills who would make a decision like this. Like I said before, it's the Thapa approach. And Raite begins to kind of realize that, because he overheard them saying he is a super valuable asset. And that created this sort of like chain of events to actually happen. Now, this is also, I suppose, technically the reveal of who the second friend of Yangchen is, who sacrificed themselves for her. It's a bit of a kind of like trick answer to a certain degree, because we maybe weren't expecting it to be an animal companion, but the way they talk about Nujian, they treat him as a full-on Avatar companion, not just an animal guide. They make it clear that Yangchen's connection with Nujian is greater than just sort of Avatar and steed. This is a true friendship, more than anything. So this sacrifice is meant to be viewed in the same regard as Jetsun's kind of sacrifice for Yangchen. And in that sense, I think they've done a great job at actually making it into a worthwhile, these are the two characters that sacrificed themselves, as was referenced in the Kyoshi novels. I know some people kind of wanted this to be Kavik, because that would have been one way to do the kind of Kavik resolution for the betrayal. I was never on board with that. I didn't think that was a good idea. To me, that would have been too kind of cliche, going down the redemption in death road. I don't think that was the way to go with Kavik and the specific dynamic that was going on with regards to the betrayal. I think as you've read the book up to now, you can clearly see there is much more nuance to this on both sides when it came to Kavik and Yangchen. That would have been a very like unsatisfying way to resolve Kavik as a character. So while this is very tragic and unfortunate, it is a hugely impactful kind of death as well, because we have lost, a kind of, important character here who the whole team likes. Again, just a chapter or two ago, we had like a Jujinta and Kavik fighting over like Nujian's like affections effectively. So they've done a good job at like making Nujian into a bit of a character. Even like the moment where like he met up with his like older sister back at the air temple, like little bits and pieces to just give more to this animal character. So it does really hit home hard here. Not to mention the fact that I think a lot of people do kind of have that effect of like, it almost hits harder to kind of read in a story or see like the death of like an animal almost more than a human to a certain degree. And that kind of plays a role here as well. Where, again, you have to see the death of Raite as a tragedy as well, especially the brutal way in which it happens. Like, that is combustion bending gone wrong in the most kind of brutal way kind of like possible to a certain degree. So and going forward as well, like that's the kind of the thing with this as well, is that everything had been going well. Yangchen was confident heading into the next stage of the mission. That was basically waiting for all the meetings to actually happen and directly find Thapa and counter Chai Si. But now she has to deal with the grief surrounding the loss of like her closest friend effectively here. And so she is not going to be 100% at all, but she still has to keep up the secrets and appearances, because there is a body double for Nujian back at Taku. She can't tell other people that Nujian is dead. She has to keep up the idea that like she never left for this mission and stuff like that. And she still has to hide Xian, who's still there. Like, there is still a kid here that they do need to look out for here as well. So this is a big kind of switch in terms of a dynamic here. And it's one of those things of like, how badly is this going to affect things going forward? Can Yangchen get back on track? And that's a nice, from a writing perspective, kind of obstacle to kind of place in the way of what's happening here. This kind of gives Chai Si the advantage here of a grief-stricken Yangchen is not going to be at her best. Because like, this is a character who already from earlier on in the book is still blaming herself for the death of Jetsun. So many of the failures with regards to like Honsha's death, the loss of the other unanimity members and stuff like that. There's so much that she's blaming herself for. Now is this too much? Is the real question here for Yangchen. And if you're really following the character arc of Yangchen in this book, that's the way you have to view this. Is this the kind of final point where like this will break her? And you kind of are like, you wouldn't blame her in a way if it did. but you know that she has to keep going despite the kind of tragedy of this incident here. So I like the chapter, even though it's like tough subject material in a way. Even like Kavik, I like that it was Kavik who sort of like catches onto it a little bit more, that in a situation like this, he is more of the kind of like errand runner, kind of like professional, like he just keeping track of like even being slightly suspicious of the kids. And in a way, because he was the one who was actually like hit by one of the kids, you kind of get why he maybe lingers a little bit more on them and actually treats them for being somewhat dangerous. That like the girl, like, can she block people? She can get rid of everyone's bending, and then there's a potential pseudo combustion bender there as well. Yangchen had her guard completely down, Jujinta to a certain degree as well, but Kavik never fully let his guard down, and I think that's kind of fitting for his character as well. But yeah, it all comes back to Chai-Si, based on the previous chapters. What has she done? Like these are the crimes, the types of crimes that she has to answer for. What was discovered on the island, and in a way, forcing a 12, 13-year-old to feel that way about themselves, that they do something like this, that's brutal just by itself. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this chapter here? Just a couple of pages, but so much to discuss with this one. So yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.